Hey folks, we're going to talk about leading successful remote teams, and I know you're all fresh off lunch, so I thought we could start this a little bit differently. I'm going to ask you all to close your eyes for a brief moment. And I'm going to ask you to imagine what maybe the ideal start to your working day looks like. Perhaps it's waking up with the sound of the birds, seeing the sunrise over the city you live in, getting up, getting ready, taking a stroll through the park on your way to work, taking your child to school perhaps. You grab a coffee on your way back to your desk. And let's open our eyes and let reality hit. The reality is your alarm goes off at 7 a.m., possibly. You are tired from a long night. You are woken at 4 a.m. by a on-call emergency. You jump in the car because you're already late to work and to do the school drop-off with your kid. You rush to get to the office. You sit there in traffic to get to your meeting just in time for your daily stand-up at 9 a.m. to give your update to your team. No updates from me. You then go and sit in your open plan office where you get probably very little work actually done. You sit in meetings and you hear from your boss about how important it is that the company is all together in the same place for the culture, the company culture. This is the only image I could find online of company culture, a water cooler. Who has a water cooler in their home? Okay, well done, good for you. Very few people. The sad reality is this is what most people's work actually looks like. So I'm going to take a little look at what the different world might look like by talking about how you could lead a successful remote team. This is me, I'm Callum, and as you can tell by my accent, I'm not from here, I'm from the UK. In fact, I flew in to Perth yesterday for the first time ever from the UK. I've been doing a conference over there. I am based in Sydney. I am fully aware of the irony of me flying tens of thousands of miles to come speak to you today about leading remote teams, but I promise I am actually based in Sydney. I'm a Microsoft MVP and a .NET developer historically. I run a company called Bump. We're a consultancy effectively, and hence I'm the chief bumpster. I chose my own title because I can, and it was to hope that recruiters couldn't find me on LinkedIn. It doesn't work. I have about a decade of experience leading teams remotely. So I'm going to tell you a bit about my journey, how I got into all of this, and how I came to work in remote teams. Back in around 2013 was when I first started working in a remote team, so a fairly long time ago. I was in the UK, I was working in a company where our tech lead had decided that she needed to move for, I think, her partner's job, and she was going to work remotely for us. Now, 2013 was a time when Slack didn't exist, and we probably used, I think, GChat to communicate mostly in my team. We did have Hangouts occasionally, but the idea of remote work was fairly alien. We were all in an office 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. Now, I then took a job in 2015 at a company in London that I hugely respected, a company that, in my opinion, was at the top of its game in the area that I was working in, another consultancy-type company, and they, excitingly to me, were a remote team. They had an office in London, they had an office in Poland, and then they had people who were dotted all around Europe, kind of working from home. And I was really intrigued to see how that was actually going to work. We had, as I say, offices based all over the country, all over Europe, in fact. I really admired this company for several reasons. They were very well respected in their space. They were doing great work, recognized for really, really high quality. They were recognized for their immense contributions to open source and to the community as well. And generally, the kinds of people that were working for them were considered sort of minor celebrities in that very niche space. So I was thrilled to join this company. I came on board, and I was working on consultancy, leading some big projects, doing some large membership systems, building some medical startups, and a couple of other things. So to me, this was like my ideal job. It kind of quite quickly started to unravel. After a few years, the company culture really started to get tested. What we learned is that whilst London, we would start work at like 9:30, maybe 10 a.m., the office in Poland, they would start work at about 7 a.m., which is 6 a.m. in the UK. And so that meant they'd done half of their working day before we in London even got into the office. London was the headquarters, and that meant that still a lot of company meetings and decisions revolved around the time that the London team worked, and therefore the team in Poland were largely left out of those decisions. We also found that, okay, we'd do a stand-up at like 10 in the morning, but that's when the Polish team are off for lunch. They have an early lunch, about 11 o'clock, and finish at 3. And I'm probably still there working till like 6 or maybe 7 p.m. There was a huge disjoint there. So the very, very smart lead developer that was on my team came up with this solution. We're going to have internet cameras in all the offices, and we're going to have a screen everywhere that means that people can always see what the people in the other office are doing to try and bring people closer together. The reality is this didn't work, as you can probably imagine. These cameras are not reliable. They break fairly regularly, but also like we were just looking at empty desks all the time because they were either finished for the day or at lunch, and vice versa. It was also kind of a little bit creepy because you could go onto some web interface and move them around, and like you'd suddenly realize someone's spying on you. It doesn't quite give you that sense of security. We were ultimately spending a lot of time on trying to make our teams better connected, and it wasn't really working. We found ourselves in long meetings, spending hours and hours of our week working on bureaucracy, on planning, on ceremony. We'd talk about like a 2-week sprint, and then on the first day of that sprint, you might have a couple of hours of sprint kickoff. Then you'd do your sprint, and at the end, you'd maybe have a sprint retrospective and some sprint planning for the following sprint. That would take out a couple of hours. We'd actually have like a cutoff, a feature cutoff, where no longer are we going to work on tickets. We're going to focus on QA and passing those things instead. So our 2-week sprint ended up being about a day of planning and bureaucracy, about 5 days of actual development, and then a few days of internal stuff. This was not really feeling too great for me, who joined a company to build great software. That's what they were renowned for. I started to feel like we were on this ever-running hamster wheel, that the faster you moved, the faster that wheel span, and it was just really, really demotivating. So I burned out, as I think a lot of people would do in this situation. I found it very tiring having these battles internally to say, hey, like I wish we would be able to get on and actually build software and get varying answers. We'd have battles with our team in Poland where we weren't really aligned on how we wanted to approach things, not least because they were coming from a different background where they maybe had worked more in financial services and others had worked in maybe startups, and we had different approaches to the way we were going to solve problems. And without getting around a table and actually talking these things through, we just weren't aligned. So I burned out, and I was like, I really don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I'm sort of 5-6 years into my career at this point going, is this really actually what I enjoy? So I did ultimately a very privileged thing, but I quit my job and decided I was going to take some time out. I went to Sydney. I took 3 months, and we went traveling around the east coast of Australia, and I loved it. But what I also realized very quickly is I do like building software. Within 5 days of leaving this role, I found myself picking up a laptop going, I just want to work on something open source. For the first time in years, I wasn't feeling like my work was a big drain on me. It was actually motivating. So I realized I need to find a way of making this work where I can work on software, work in a software team that fits all of my goals and my values. So I decided to, here's a quote. This is from my mum. At around the same time, you look unwell, grey, almost dead. This was the Christmas that I actually quit my role. And this was kind of the wake-up call that I really needed to say, hey, it's time to do something. So I decided to start my own company. I felt that if I was going to go out on my own, I'd be able to make certain rules and principles that I was going to live by that really ultimately made me happy and made me enjoy what I was going to do. So in starting a new company, you have a very beneficial position where you can actually choose everything, absolutely everything from day one. And this meant I could define what my culture looked like, my processes, and kind of everything. At the start, it was just me, and I didn't really intend to grow too big, too quickly. But it's really hard to turn down work, and money's cool. So eventually, we grew to a fair size where these things mattered. And I was able to make these decisions early on and say, these are our core values, and we're going to stick to them. No manager or someone telling me what I had to do. So this is a quote from, I have the name here, Peter Drucker. He's a management consultant, so I wouldn't read too much into this, but essentially it's a famous saying, culture eats strategy for breakfast, and I think that's absolutely true. The thing that I valued about this other company that I was going to join was that their culture was renowned as being innovative and doing great work, and the people that were working within that team, they exuded those values onto the onto the community as well. So I was like, we're going to build that, but without all of the shit bits that I had to deal with. So I set out 4 key pillars that were going to shape the way for my company going forward. And this is perhaps very uncommercial and a very interesting take. But I decided that our number 1 company value was going to be community. And basically open source. How can we do what we can do to contribute as much back as possible to the open source community, either through releasing open source software, through supporting existing open source platforms, or just speaking at events and making our work known. I also saw this as being actually quite beneficial indirectly as well, because the more visible I am, the more visible my team are, the more likely people are to want to work with us as well. We become renowned in our field for doing these things. So if there was a way we could make the company revolve around that and make a way of doing all these things that we enjoy, how cool would that be? So, as I say, it was an opportunity really to empower my team to contribute and to establish a bit of a reputation in their field. Personal branding is a key thing here. I encourage my team to go out and speak at events and contribute back to open source. And they can do that on company time. We give them literally endless resources to do that. We never ask them at any point to say who they work for. This is not a requirement. They've not got a company-branded slide deck or T-shirts that we make them wear at events. Instead, it's just like, go out and make yourself known. Because I've realized people want to work with people, not companies. So when you're looking to hire somebody, or maybe you're looking for your next project, people want to work with the people that they perceive to be the experts on those things, not necessarily the company that's best at selling that they are the expert in that thing. So personal branding is a huge thing. We want to empower our team to be visible in their community, in their chosen field. And that could look like a whole range of things, be it software, speaking, etc. My other second pillar, very close to that first pillar, was I want to focus strongly on on full technical quality, transparency, do the absolute best thing we can do by our customers. I'm sure everybody's company says they do that, but we all know the reality that when deadlines come to a bit of a crunch, quality starts to slip, and that doesn't make me happy. Neither does it make the great people that I employ happy. So I decided, whatever it costs, whatever it takes, we're going to make sure that we're going to do the right or the best thing by our customers at every single step. That means if something's not ready or right, we're not going to put it out there. And it means we can start to build this reputation of, again, doing the right thing by our customers. And it means our team's motivated. They can feel like they are proud in the work they do. My third thing was we wanted to make a remote-only company. We were going to be fully remote. And I don't mean that we had an office somewhere that people would commute into every now and again. It would be a truly remote company with no central home or headquarters. And we were going to be fully flexible as well. The thing I love about flexibility is that you can actually do what you want. And I realized working in these other companies where they said that we had flexible hours, that actually just meant a disconnect in the team and people scrambling to then make up for that. To build a truly flexible team, we needed to embrace that centrally and make sure that everyone was aligned on what flexibility meant. So, by a quick show of hands, who in here has an employer who claims their work is flexible hours? Cool. Keep your hand up if you have a daily stand-up at a fixed time. Okay, there's a fair number there. So your work's not that flexible. You have to be available at that set time every day. And I decided that that wasn't really akin to having a truly flexible team. We're remote and flexible, which means we allow our employees to work from wherever and kind of whenever they want, within reason. So we introduced a couple of policies like work from anywhere and unlimited leave. Work from anywhere means that you can set up to work where you feel most comfortable. And we provide you a small budget to make sure that your home office, if that is where you prefer to work, is set up appropriately so you can. We also provide people access to co-working spaces or an office space if that's what they believe is where they work best. For most of my team, they're parents and people who like and value having time with their kids, and that means they can shape their days around what works for them. Doing the school run, maybe work in the evening when it's a bit quieter and the kids have gone to bed, or start a bit earlier in the day. Me personally, I'm a night owl, so I really like to sort of do my meetings in the day, and then in the evening I do my development work that I might have needed to do. It just allows me to be more effective. Unlimited leave we'll talk about a bit later, but essentially this idea that if you want to take a day off, you take a day off, within reason. We have a policy that you just give us a couple of days' notice. or effectively double the amount of leave that you're looking to take as notice. But my view is, if you're working at a company and you're not feeling motivated to go into work today, you're probably not going to be that effective in the first place, and so you're better off saying, look, I need to take a day to myself, but I'll come back and I'll be raring to go in a couple of days' time. Now, minimal ceremony. I mentioned that whole 2-week sprint where you only get about half of the actual time building things done. This was a huge thing for me of wanting to change and make sure that we were going to do this right. The next 5 things I'm about to say are quite controversial, and your mileage will vary is all I would say on this. But we'll talk about each one. So I got rid of stand-ups, timesheets, hierarchy, meetings, and overtime. Sounds great, doesn't it? Let's drill into each of these. So stand-ups, as I said, if we're trying to build a truly flexible culture, having a stand-up at 9 a.m. every morning does not work. Right now, actually, we're a team based across Australia and the UK, so having a stand-up that works for everyone is not really practical. Instead, we focus on asynchronous communication, really strong asynchronous communication. We have Slack channels and we have individual project teams who are responsible for deciding how they wish to communicate and provide updates. By getting rid of stand-ups, we are absolutely not saying that regular updates shouldn't be a thing. No, no, no. But the way you communicate those updates should be done in a way that suits your team. So if that means kind of end-of-day update from each person on Slack so that the next person, when they start, is clear where everyone got to, that's great as far as I'm concerned. Meetings, again, it's another big drain of time, isn't it? But if the meeting's not really delivering value, cut it out. We should try and keep things to quick huddles on Slack if it's just a quick discussion, or even like write-ups. Someone writes up their thoughts and says, this is what I'm thinking for this architecture or this approach. What do you think? And it can be more asynchronous that way too. Timesheets. I gave this talk in Europe 2 weeks ago, and I got a bit of feedback afterwards, which is very fair, and it applies here too. I know the Fair Work Act here requires that employers are making sure that you are not working more than the required hours in a week, and make sure that for the hours you are working, you are being paid fairly and above the minimum wage. This is not to say you shouldn't be doing those things at all. That is really important. But what I mean by a timesheet is your granular tracking of time, saying I spent 15 minutes on this thing, 20 minutes on this thing. In consulting companies, this is very common because it directly relates to how you bill things. But what I've found working in different software teams is that timesheets are often used as kind of a bit of a bludgeon on people saying, like, oh, you didn't deliver that task within the agreed amount of time. And people end up lying on them. So it's completely pointless. If we're putting in an entry into a timesheet that doesn't actually correlate to a billable item of work, then as far as I'm concerned, it shouldn't be there in the first place. It doesn't matter. And if the billable items that are being recorded are not accurate to the actual amount of time you spent, then it equally doesn't matter. This is not to say you shouldn't be monitoring how your time is spent and where your time goes, but I think that's a different thing to the timesheet. If you estimate a task as being 2 hours and it takes 3, I don't care. We've learned something. Sometimes things take a bit longer. If you estimate a task at a week and that takes 2 weeks, it's going to be very, very obvious to everybody in the team that that thing has taken 2 weeks instead of 1. And that's where we should be focusing our time on learning. And I don't think the timesheet actually helps communicate that. These are things for middle management and salespeople to ultimately build customers with. So we don't do timesheets. We got rid of them completely. Now, hierarchy is another interesting one. And I admit, works better because we're a smaller company and means that we can build in this kind of structure. But essentially, no layers of management. We're going to keep it very, very flat. Each team within my company has a lead developer role, and that lead developer is responsible for the overall technical delivery of that project for a customer. They may not be the one that's doing most of the actual technical work, but they are a key point of contact, a resource internally where you can turn to this person and say, how should we be doing this? This also means that those lead developer roles can rotate around different projects. So we've not got like a single head of department or head of something that is making all the decisions. The decisions are being spread across the team. It also means that people can actually work in multiple squads, and it works out quite nicely for knowledge sharing. Finally, overtime. I've worked on companies where I've had to work overtime and where I've had to do on-call work and those sorts of things. We just don't do it. It's quite simple, actually, when you think about it. We plan properly. We make sure that we're communicating when a deadline's not going to get hit, and we manage it, rather than this kind of panicked, who in here has had to do like a pizza party evening at work where it's like, let's all race to get this done. We've not done one. In 10 years of running this company, we've not done one, and I'm really happy about that. It's going to stay that way. It doesn't help anybody. The team burns out quicker. We just don't do overtime. Good communication, I think, is the recipe to all of these things. Hence the next slide, great communication. So, okay, we've implemented this, and what happened? So reputation makes up 80% of our sales as a company. As I said at the start, our number one value is community, empowering our team to be visible and to contribute and to do work they feel proud in. And that means that it's a big sales driver for us. In fact, it is, literally 80% of our business. And the average tenure of our employees is just over 4 years, like 4.3 years or something, which in the software space is quite incredible, when the average tenure in most companies is around 18 to 20 months. So we are significantly bucking industry trends by doing this. We have a team that feels happier, feels more rewarded, feels more engaged in the company. Complete side note, actually, we had a team retreat a few days ago, and somebody around the table brought up, what's the best company you've ever worked for? And that's quite awkward with me sitting in the corner like, go on, let me hear what you have to say. Of course, a few people in my team did take the very diplomatic, like, well, it would be hard to say type thing. But one of the resounding things that did come out was, well, actually, Bump is quite a good place to work because I have the flexibility and I feel like we do great stuff. And that's exactly what I wanted to hear. Ultimately, I never set out to start the company to make a load of money. Instead, I just wanted to do work that made me feel happy and proud. And if the team feel that same way, that's awesome. It's not all, rainbows. We learned a hell of a lot of lessons in doing this as well. So we do focus quite a lot on heavily technical work, and somebody in my team turned around to me a few years ago and said, it would be nice if we could just do something like simple for once, because the kinds of work we've been taking on have been quite draining, and I hadn't thought of it like that. What I really enjoy may not be what other people in the company enjoy. So I like those big, juicy challenges that we want to solve, and maybe others would prefer something lighter at times. So people need variety, and we went out and we found that variety by getting on some simpler projects. Knowledge and work silos are quite hard to break down once they form. People become the expert in their thing, and that's the person you always go and talk to about that product or project. So we've been working quite hard in the team to identify those and built this culture where if you spot one forming, just call it out, and we'll then do something about it. So we run a weekly planning session with a kind of small team of leads where we say, could we be spreading some of this work around some other people? Could we be encouraging some knowledge sharing here, either through pair programming or some other things? I banned ceremony, but actually some ceremony is unfortunately essential. So with a remote team, we found that if we weren't talking as a whole team regularly, we became unaligned on things like priorities as a company, whole company priorities. Or people weren't really aware what other people in the team were working on. It's like, hey, they don't seem busy and I'm run off my feet. Could we get some help here? But actually, we do need a regular touch point. So we introduced one mandatory meeting a week, 30 minutes on a Monday, and with our fully distributed team, UK and Australia, that is unfortunately evening time in Australia and morning time in the UK. And it's just the kind of sacrifice that as a team we've decided we're going to make. But we have 15 minutes of talking about bullshit, like what do you do at the weekend, and then a 15-minute quick, very, very quick talk about priorities and updates, and we just set the tone for the week. And that's an update from every single department. So from the development team, there's an opportunity for people to do a quick demo of something they've been working on if they want some feedback, from sales and the support team as well. Flexibility is a two-way street. I learned this one fairly recently. It requires compromise and really good communication. I knew the communication part, but compromise was something I hadn't quite clocked. We were preparing for a launch for a customer, and it was agreed weeks out that it would be on this day at this time. And it came to 2 hours before that, and the lead engineer on that project said, oh, I've got a dentist appointment at that time. And we said, okay, well, this was kind of decided a number of weeks ago, what's happened. And he said, yeah, but it wasn't in the calendar, so I didn't realize. My response to that was, well, neither is your dentist appointment. But it turns out that compromise is necessary. Of course, we just managed. We made it work. No one was going to cancel any dentist appointments. We got someone else in, but it was a less than ideal situation. We would have rathered a few more hours notice to go and work that out. And yeah, flexibility ultimately goes both ways. Which comes to the next point, unlimited leave. You'll have heard probably this from a number of companies, especially in Silicon Valley. They put unlimited leave in place, and it means that people take less leave. That is absolutely true. The first year we did this, people didn't feel necessarily comfortable about what was right, what's pushing the limits. So we established some guidelines, and we have implemented still an unlimited leave policy, but we have a kind of minimum leave requirement, which is the legal minimum in your country. I think it's like 20 days here. It's the same in the UK, plus public holidays. Then we give people a 75% bonus on top of that as their recommended leave allowance. So that's already a fairly generous amount of leave. That's like 7 weeks over here. And then on top of that, you can take as much as you want beyond it, but it just requires a discussion with your manager at that point. Almost to reassure the person who is taking the leave that it's okay, rather than for the company to check, if that makes sense. Our view on all of this and with flexibility is you treat people like adults and they will treat you the same way. So we really try to make people feel empowered that they can make decisions within guidelines. Finally, my number one value being community and open source is really hard to do if it's not prioritized, and it doesn't necessarily pay the bills. So it's often easy to prioritize that over your client work or some other things. We've actually recently shifted it to be its own sort of stream of work with its own set of priorities, and we treat it like a client. So we schedule someone to work on that project effectively for a week. Basically, at any given time, we have someone working on something open source any given week. And this has really changed the way we think about how we can contribute back. So really dedicating the time to it is crucial. I'll talk a bit about some of the tools we use. I don't think we're doing anything non-standard here. We're a Google Workspace shop. We use GitHub. We did use Trello for our project management tool. We really liked it because it was quite visual and not Jira, where you have a lot of structure. We let teams kind of organize those boards exactly how they want. And then we use Slack. Slack has become our central place for keeping track of things, and we've kind of come up with a bit of a convention that I think I like. So we have some global channels in our Slack channel, one called Announcements. That's a read-only channel where certain people are able to post updates. And actually, it should really be called Celebrations. We use it more to celebrate the great work that the team is doing when a new launch happens, or when a new hire joins, or really, just when something great has happened. We announce it in there. We have a community channel. This is where we talk about all things going on in our wider tech community. We have a devs team channel here, an emergencies channel that has a bunch of alerts that come in there. And so if, say, a system goes down, it's kind of in one central place. Estimations channel, so that if someone needs a viewpoint on, hey, how much time do we think this task is going to take, it can go in the estimations channel. Our general channel is just for chatter. A leads channel, open source. Random is like cat memes and GIFs and stuff. Sales, uptime, you get it. But then after that, we have these prefixes before all of our channel names. So internal dash something is for internal projects. Project dash something is for a project team to work in. And then we have client dash something as well, where we might have a client or a customer actually in our Slack group too. And this naming convention makes it really easy to discover exactly where you can go to find the information or talk to the people you need to talk to about a certain thing. And then when you get there, at the top of our Slack project, you can have little descriptions. And we mentioned there who is the lead developer, so you know who to go and shout at when things like the documentation's not right. And we have a list of bookmarks that helps you go and find what the GitHub repo or repos are for this project, where the specification or designs or those sorts of things are, and key URLs for environments, etc. People are using these channels really well, and this is our primary tool of communication. We don't do email, we don't do big, long planning calls. Instead, a lot of the collaboration happens directly in Slack. And you can see how my team uses it. Here is a screenshot from fairly recently where one of my team says, hey, I'm losing my mind today. If someone wants to just chat, I'll be on a huddle and you can jump in there. And you'll see they've also said, we can also talk about CFPs, call for papers, for conferences, if people are also feeling like they need a bit of a break. Now, this is because we set this person a side quest. I like to call them side quests, but ultimately it's just a responsibility to say, hey, you're in charge of making sure that the company has some awareness and motivation to submit to different conferences this year. So at every possible opportunity, maybe every couple of weeks, just mention, hey, there's these conferences coming up. Are there any ideas that as a company we could be working on and putting some things forward? And then a little chat happened with a couple of people, and they felt better about their days. So we use Slack in a number of different ways. It's also that water cooler conversation space. Being a fully remote team, spanning literally 12 opposing time zones, we've recently decided that notifications are on the individual person to decide when they want to be notified. Because we're a fully flexible team, rather than saying you must have notifications on between these hours, we now just say it's completely up to you. Because I span UK and Australia largely, my range is huge. You can see it's literally 15 hours on the left-hand side there. But on a Friday, I clock off a bit earlier, and I have my notifications set so that I won't get notifications after that point. We use Slack and Google Calendar, so here you can see these two different screenshots. One of them is showing my Google Calendar, and it means that when someone tries to schedule a meeting with me outside of those hours, it gives them a little warning to say, hey, this isn't quite when Callum usually works. Same with Slack. There is absolutely no obligation for anybody in the team to have anything on personal devices or to have their notifications on for more than they feel comfortable. It's completely up to them. For specific things and for specific people, you can enable this VIPs feature in Slack that allows people to punch through the notification block, but essentially people respect this quite well. And it means that you don't feel like you always have to be on or always checking a phone. People set their own boundaries, and we felt this really works quite well. Let's talk a bit about mentorship, because in a remote team setting, onboarding is quite tough. And when you're trying to teach someone about your company culture and instill that, it's really important you get it right from the very start. So we've devised this onboarding process that is maybe a bit different to what you might be used to. It takes 3 days, but they're 3 half days. So we onboard people in 3 different chunks. They have first a welcome meeting, where they'll join a call generally with the team, they'll get introduced to everybody, and then they'll have a one-on-one with their manager to go through what our key processes are. Get set up on IT, here's how you log into your email, here's how you find certain things. Then that's it for the day. There's no point in sitting around doing nothing whilst other people are also trying to do their work and you're feeling a bit lost. So we just cut it there, you get set up, and then the next day, you'll come in and you'll have an actual technical onboarding with your team or teams that you'll be working in. That's where you get shown the different architectures you're going to be working on. You get a good understanding of the code base. You might get things running on your local machine. And then we call it a day, half a day. And then the next day, as many people as we possibly can, depending on where they're located, we'll get them together in person, and they'll have lunch. And it's purely about actually meeting and bonding with your colleagues one-on-one. I complained recently because we had a new starter, and I gave one of my team the company card and said, go out, have lunch, enjoy yourselves. And I came back and I got this receipt that was like, a bit tiny. And I was like, come on, spend more next time, enjoy yourselves. Ultimately, this is about forming those relationships with people you're going to work with for hopefully years to come. So it's really important we do that right. We felt this works quite well as a way of just breaking all of the different barriers that you might struggle with. And it means that come Monday, the day that they actually try and start work properly, that they feel prepared, integrated into the team, and everyone has a good feel for how everyone wants to work. One-to-ones are difficult. If you're in a remote setting, one-to-ones are really important. Now, I feel like I talk to my team daily. Every person in my team, probably daily. But it's often about work or solving a problem, and it's not about how are you doing. And so these one-to-one chats with your manager are crucial to make sure that you're supporting someone in terms of their progress, or just making sure that you spot burnout or those sorts of situations far down the line, or as far down the line as possible. So we have a monthly one-to-one process with everybody where it's like a 30-minute sit-down where we'll just talk about life. But if possible, we do these in person as well. So despite being a remote team, we do like to get people together in person to, just to see people every now and again. So when we were working in an office, it was very easy to see if someone was struggling. And equally, if you were working in an office and the internet went down, everyone's internet went down and everyone was in the same boat. But if you are that person that's struggling, or you are that person that's internet has gone down, you can start to feel like you're sort of letting everyone down a bit. I'll tell you a little story here. We employed somebody who was working remote for us, a fairly junior developer, and they had constant internet issues, which made it really tough. You'd get on a call to try and work through a problem with them, and it would cut out every 30 seconds. Things would take a million years to load, and it just wasn't fun. They felt it too. They had their whole front garden dug up, had a super fast internet connection put in, and it was still a problem. And we were like, what? We've done everything. It must be the laptop. So we replaced the laptop. Brand new Dell XPS laptop. We got it replaced, got a brand new one in, and it was still happening. We're like, this can't be possible. This went on for 2 years. And we then found out that Dell XPS laptops have this network prioritization software on them. And if you're on a call and doing something else at the same time, it just throttles everything. Everyone that's got a Dell XPS is going to go home and check that they've not got that on now. But we disabled that, and like that, it was working again, and it was fantastic, and we were able to collaborate with this person. But I hate to think how much that tech issue caused a setback to that person's career, because they were early in their career, and they were, not able to get the most out of the team. We do pair programming and things like that as a way of trying to coach our more junior developers into learning, but also we use this as just a way of collaborating on topics that might be harder or something that needs a couple of brains to work out. This is a great way of making sure that people feel like you're working with a colleague, because when you're in a remote setting, you can't just turn around to someone and say, hey, what's your thought on this? Or, hey, can I get some feedback on this thing? And code reviews are equally very important, but they can go so wrong. So we aim for no more than 3 comments on a code review. If there's more than 3 comments, it's going to require a conversation. And code reviews can often feel like a bit of an attack, especially for more junior people in your teams. So we feel like a call is a much better way of discussing that feedback. It's more practical. We utilize the code suggestions feature in GitHub quite a lot. It's much easier to explain or demonstrate what you mean rather than just write out a whole bunch of text. And actually, if we can avoid all of this in the first place by documenting our desired approach up front, referencing back to that documentation regularly, and also just linking off to other projects where we've done certain things in a similar way, this helps people get up to speed and feel like they know what they're going to build. So, a great approach up front. What I will say is, remote work really isn't for everyone. There is a very specific type of person that works well in an environment where they don't have that mentor directly next to them. And the nicest thing you can do is, as soon as you as an employee or you as an employer realize that it's not working out, is say. Because you don't want to be held back for 3 years working in a setup that just doesn't work for you. Instead, go to an office, sit with people. That's absolutely fine. It's okay to admit that it doesn't work for everybody. I'm going to talk quickly about health and well-being, and of course this needs to come with a disclaimer that I am not a doctor, a trained professional in any way. These are just my views and opinions based on my experience, and I know this is a sensitive topic. But burnout is very much a thing, especially in this industry. And it's something that when you're not seeing people day to day, it's hard to recognize early on. It's also hard when you're on your own and not really realizing until you go outside, sit with family until your mum says you look dead, that actually this is affecting you. So burnout, ADHD, stress, depression, all of these things came to light a lot more recently, where the COVID pandemic forced people to be alone with their thoughts a lot more, and it made us acutely aware of some of these behaviors. During the pandemic, 62% of people reported in tech that they were feeling burned out. And actually, of that, I think it was about 70% of women in tech said they were feeling burned out as well. This was from, life stresses, in addition to suddenly being thrust into working from home, different companies working out their strategies for how they were going to work properly together, remotely. And a study that was also done around the same time proved that actually remote work maybe isn't the golden solution here to a lot of these things. It's not for everybody. Some people say that they were feeling more negative, less engaged, and less rewarded by the work that they were doing. My team came out of the pandemic with 2/3 of the team identifying as having ADHD. We went into it with one person in the team having that. So it was a fairly big jump. And this was a big lesson for me, something that we had to then work through as a team, work out how we were going to solve this, because in addition to dealing with the life stresses of the pandemic, we had to work out how we were going to work together effectively. Symptoms of ADHD might include impulsiveness, disorganization or lack of prioritization, poor time management, trouble multitasking, restlessness, getting easily frustrated, having mood swings or a hot temper, or being defensive. Does anybody in this room resonate with any of these symptoms? Yeah. Sure, we all do. The point here is ADHD is a spectrum. You may experience different aspects of this, some, all, or kind of anything. The reality is, though, the best thing you can do is recognize them early and work out a way of handling them and tell the people around you how they can best help you to handle those things. So one of the things that we've learned is that rewarding work is really important. People feeling like they are completing a set of tasks and working through those is critical. Individual planning and tracking of those things is also important. Whilst we don't do timesheets and don't have a daily stand-up to keep people accountable, actually having a very clear deadline on something is often really helpful. Not just a vague, within the next week or something, we need this to be done. And finally, creating buffer as a manager to help manage expectations, to give people the space to deal in their own way with these things is crucial. So if you're communicating well as a team and you've estimated something as being 3 days, you might want to be like, okay, we'll make sure we've allocated a bit of buffer there, we'll call it 4 days, so this person can work through it. We moved project management tools from Trello to ClickUp. ClickUp is a really great tool. I'm not sponsored by them in any way, but I really advocate for this because it has some nice structured features that actually help a lot with some of these challenges with people who like to work in a certain way. Things like to-do lists and proper checklists, color-coded statuses that if you're in a certain state, it doesn't then notify you that things are overdue, etc., that Trello would have done in the past as well. So I highly recommend that. I'm going to leave with this question: what makes a good manager? I think it's an easier answer to say what makes a bad manager. When I was in the airport on the way here, I was sat in the lounge listening to I'm guessing a team lead or a manager on a call with, I'm guessing, a team of engineers. And they were berating these engineers, saying, this feature's not ready, it needs to be ready by Friday, this is embarrassing, I need answers about why, but also fix the issue, but I need answers, and what am I going to present on Friday? It's like, that is not productive or conducive to doing any kind of good work. I felt really bad for the engineers on the other end of the line. And ultimately, the key for a manager is you should be setting focus and direction, but you really should be your team's biggest champion. You should be cheering them on, encouraging them to do their absolute best work, working in the background to eliminate resistance and making sure that their well-being is ultimately paramount to aid their productivity. So none of this berating. My key takeaways that I'll leave you with. Remote work is hard or harder than working in an office, and it's really not suited to everybody. You need to make sure that if you are going to set up a remote team or you're going to work in a remote team, that you communicate really well and that you have some of these things in mind that, maybe it's actually not for me. Consistent touch points are ultimately critical. As much as I wanted to get rid of every single meeting, we do need them, and they're crucial for aligning priorities and direction of your team. So if you're a manager, making sure those are there whilst balancing that with your team doing great work is the key. A culture is learned, and it starts with your leaders. So our onboarding process being like a bit fun, friendly, and not super duper intense is one of my values as a company. And the things like open source being a key priority is a key value. So we teach people that from day one. And we do it, all of us, so that hopefully other people follow. Finally, understanding your team's unique attributes, whether it's ADHD qualities, and then adapting your processes to make sure that they are able to work and do their best work within those is really, really important. And I'm out of time. Thank you. I'm on GitHub, Twitter, Blue Sky, LinkedIn, all of that handles, all the same handle. I'll be around for the rest of the day. I'd love to chat, because I know everyone's mileage is going to vary with this. This is just my viewpoint. Thank you very much.